Good afternoon and welcome to another CERIAS security seminar. And this week you get 3 for the price of 1. Of course, the admission price is steep here to get in, but there are 3 of us that are going to be talking together on the topic shown on the slide, the ontological semantic technology goes phishing. And I am going to be starting that talk, and as part of our tag team, Victor's going to tag me and come in, take over, and then switch to Julia Taylor. So to get things started here, give you an overview of what the talk is about. And the intent here is to talk about issues related to phishing, which is a criminal activity committed online, and provide some ideas that we are investigating for how to discover phishing and thereby help prevent it from succeeding. So I'm going to start and give a little bit of an overview of what phishing is all about, and then we'll move on to some of the research issues of the past and the present. So the Anti-Phishing Working Group is an organization of scientists, law enforcement personnel, security personnel, and others who have joined forces to find best practices in stopping phishing, finding methods of apprehending those who are involved in phishing activities, and to help limit the losses. They have a definition, a long definition of what phishing is, and it's listed here as a criminal mechanism that uses 2 components together, both a social component and a technological component. Both together. If the activity only involves a technological component, it's not phishing, because there has to be some element of attempting to trick the user, the victim, into divulging information. But if it was only the social engineering aspects, then that's a fairly traditional kind of fraud that has been conducted for really thousands of years as a confidence scam of one kind or another, or misrepresentation. And so phishing is the unique combination of some of those mechanisms of social engineering with some of the technological issues, and they're designed to trick the recipients or the targets into divulging financial information, personal information, or other kinds of information that is then used for criminal gain. A somewhat shorter definition is the intent to steal personal identity data or financial account credentials. And the kind of phishing that we see perhaps most often has an email component, where the phishing is conducted through an email message that is sent to one or more victims. It is aided by having worldwide websites, web pages that present a false front, that present themselves as belonging to an entity that they don't really belong to, and are used to capture the information. Or sometimes, in conjunction with malware, some kind of virus or bot client that is installed on the victim's computer to help capture that information, or to help hide the fact that the phishing is occurring by hiding some of the characteristic behaviors. This includes a number of activities that are involved by using brand name of a company like Amazon or eBay or BMW or Kraft Foods or any of a number of organizations, Citibank, Chase, to lull you into a sense that it is an official communication of some kind, using logos or visual identity of organizations as a means of tricking you into believing that you are communicating with a valid entity, links, and sometimes even stolen third-party information. So taking information from a third party about your relationship with the organization that they are representing themselves to be. So for instance, taking customer list information or warranty response information, knowing that you purchased something from a vendor and then using that to pretend to be representing that vendor or representing a bank that you do business with. Phishing as an activity, as I noted, the fraud part goes back thousands of years. But the phishing aspect, the combination of electronic means, email or bulletin boards or websites with this false representation, is something that goes back into the mid-1980s. This is really before the World Wide Web started in 1990. But there were phishing-style attacks committed over the Usenet and mailing lists in what was the precursor to the network as most of us know it now. The name phishing appears to go back to the 1990s, mid-1990s, 95, 96, related to a series of frauds that were committed against the AOL ISP service. And phishing was taken from the PH frac name of sort of the underground attacks on phone systems and became phishing here. The first non-AOL instances that were recorded occurred in 2001, and there were several of them that occurred prior to the 9/11 incidents in New York City, and then several afterwards that took advantage of that, pretending to be associated with the government or law enforcement as part of the 9/11. The kinds of losses here are difficult to quantify because sometimes people don't know they've lost anything. Reputation information, personal information is hard to value. But in the US, there are ranges of estimates between $50 million a year in losses up to well over $2 billion. There's a couple subtypes that we're not going to really talk much about here, but you'll see in the literature. There's the idea of spear phishing, which targets a smaller group, is not quite so random as phishing in general. Phishing in general would be email to everybody whose email address we can find saying that your account is overdrawn, please log in and change your password, or that your account limits are being changed. Spear phishing is more narrow in the way it approaches. It takes information that may be related to you and only targets those individuals who are likely to have the connection. Therefore, if someone were to target only purdue.edu addresses or only target people who are in the student directory and tell you that your webmail account on a Purdue machine is at a quota limit, that's spear phishing because they're using a narrow bit of information. Another version of narrow phishing is called whale phishing or whaling, and the idea here is that the fish you're going after is very big. And generally this is an executive or a senior manager or someone of importance in a company or organization, and the idea there is to get information on, to be able to get into the system and get privileged access. Tab nabbing is the idea of masquerading links to social services and making it look like you've logged out from inactivity and asking you to log back into Facebook or Twitter or whatever your site is. And the evil twin kind of phishing, which is an interesting name, is where you go to a place like Starbucks and someone has actually taken over the wireless network and it looks like you're connecting to the sites you think you are connecting to, but in actuality you're connecting to the phishing sites. There are also some types that extend outside of phishing. Vishing is voicemail phishing, using voice over IP or recordings to call you up and tell you that you're overdrawn at the bank or that your credit card may have been stolen, and please give them the password to verify the account information. Smishing is SMS or ICQ based phishing. It isn't over email, but it's again taking advantage of cell phone channels. Farming is corrupting DNS entities so that, again, it's like evil twin where you think you're connecting to your bank site or Amazon or Facebook, but in actuality you're connecting to theirs. And then there's the romance Facebook kind of phishing where false identities are created. They may take somebody's name and create an account. So if somebody might take Victor's persona and create it on Foursquare or MySpace, he has a Facebook account, but what they do is take his picture and create that persona and then friend people to be able to get their information or convince them of something.
Can you really friend a person on one picture?
Yeah, that only the very gullible. There are some current defenses, and I'm not going to go through all of these in the interest of time, but they're mostly technically based or are around educating the end users, and those have proven not to work very well, and you'll see some numbers shortly about that case. Filtering, blacklisting are all based on recognizing phishing that has already happened, using characteristics of what has already happened. But the criminals who are involved in this are learning and evolving, and therefore using retrospective knowledge is not necessarily going to be helpful to us. With that, as a very quick introduction, and there's certainly a lot online if you want to see more, I'm now going to have Victor tag me, and he'll come in and talk about some of the research on this so far.
What do I push to?
Just the mouse.
Thank you, Gene. I have many more slides than I will be able to talk about, so I will rush through them because the important part, the innovative part of the talk is something that Julia will be talking about. So I will probably spend no more than 15 minutes on it, half an hour, 25, what do you?
20 minutes.
You need about 20 minutes? Okay. So what this is about is the result of my exercise in speed reading or scanning through the literature. I started out with a few articles which seemed to be central and then went over what they mentioned. I had one particular bias in mind, and I will admit that towards the end. There are references here. If you want the full references, let me know at Viraskin. Well, you saw it, Viraskin at Purdue.edu. I'll send you the full references, sometimes the PDFs. What is good about this literature is that just about everything is available online. Here are, to illustrate what Gene was talking about, the pretty scary statistics in this article. The article is about what makes a bogus website credible. That is, you got the phishing email or one of those phishing, smishing, whatever, you clicked, you are on the website. This is where this and the other articles take over. That is, you are looking at the website before you enter your data or whatever. They want you to think and figure out whether it is a bogus website or not. So 90% of us have been fooled by good phishing websites. The anti-phishing browsing cues, when the browser tells you something, for instance, about the fact that the certificate is invalid or whatever, don't discourage most people. People do not, just a quarter of us, do not look at the telltale things like the address bar doesn't correspond to what it says it is, and the status and other security indicators, some of which I will mention before. On the test set, 40% of regular participants, not necessarily very sophisticated users, make mistakes 40% of the time. I went the other way. What am I doing wrong? It just worked.
You can just use these.
Yeah, right. Right.
You can fish.
Yes. Pop-up warnings about fraudulent certificates are ineffective. And some of the best sites sometimes let their certificates expire. I thought it was funny when I went to the National Security Agency site and saw that the certificate has expired. The other thing which is very comforting to me is that such factors as education, age, sex, previous experience, all of these things do not matter at all. We are all idiots across the board. So that's their finding. Here there are three explanations, which are pretty vague and sort of convincing because they include everything. First, there's lack of knowledge, first of the way the computer operates, and second of the whole issue of security and its indicators, things to look for. Visual deception, Spaf mentioned that also deceptive text, for instance, using an I for L or L for 1, and so you think that you are on the pay PAL side, but you are actually on pay PA1 side, which is a phishing side. Images masking a hyperlink. Here is an image, and you click, you don't know what on, you are clicking on Windows, masking Windows. And deceptive look and feel. Note my typo, type of separate words. Type of information requested, it's basically when everything else fails. That is, you cannot find any telltale signs that the website is bogus, then just hesitate because they want the particulars that phishing sites typically want. And the bounded attention, that's a polite way of saying paying no attention either to security indicators or to their absence. You don't need to see the details of the pictures we pasted in, but on this page, the legitimate PAL page, there are 4 indicators that it is genuine and it is not a bogus website. They are marked at the top bar, and at the bottom there are 2 padlocks and the indication that it is indeed PayPal and the HTTPS as well. People don't pay attention that they are there. People don't pay attention to the fact that they are not there. There are 2 basic approaches to bogus website detection. We are still on the website after we have clicked in response to a phishing email. Rule-based, and I will talk more about that, and a very popular machine learning approach. And you're probably more familiar with machine learning than with other approach. So I just listed the major principles. You take a number of known bogus sites, a number of known real credible sites as your training set. You probably start with a limited list of features, many of them dealing with the occurrence or co-occurrence of certain phenomena. And you run a variety, there are probably half a dozen of popular machine learning algorithms, and the people are still improving them and coming up with new algorithms, combinations of the old, and you run it many times trying to come up with a way to separate the good ones with the, from the bad ones. I wish we had time. I could show you the video how there are dots on the chart and how the algorithm tries to sort of draw the line and finally rests when it cannot do much better. And typically you find that there is like one outlier that they didn't get and maybe one false positive, but basically they separate it well. And then they apply it to the control set, that is another set of good ones and bad ones, see how it works there, and when they are satisfied that it's doing a pretty good job, they release it to the world. And the idea is that every new website, they will be able to predict with some degree of confidence that it will be a bogus one or not a bogus one. Like Spaff said, the phishers, like all spammers, all hackers, are smart people, and they probably read research papers, and so they know what to avoid, and they figure out with new ones. So on the new ones, machine learning approach will not be very successful, neither will the other one be. Here is probably the best article that I found on the rule-based approach. You study the good websites and bad websites manually, that is using your intelligence, sometimes auxiliary computational method, but mostly you find these sites more or less intuitively. We are helped by all kinds of things that exist on the web. That is, if the web page is not known to all search engines, probably it's a new phishing site. If the domain is not known. That's an example. There are 15 rules, and I will not comment on all of them. I will show all of them to you. Of interest, there is, in this particular article, they made a list of 62 not words but word stems, such that their presence tends to indicate that it's a phishing website. For instance, sign in and log in are among those words, because that's what the bogus websites want you to do. And you see that some of these are very easy to figure out if the website has a URL with some suspicious things. Rule 5 is like that as well, and Rule 6, URL has 5 or more dots. Then there are the URLs that are on the blacklist. It's interesting that then it is potentially a phishing web page. Apparently, there are false positives on blacklist as well. If a URL contains a top phishing target, that would be your whaling, for instance. Password input field, suspicious. Meta tag. If it's redirected by its server, just run. And there are combinations of features here, bad HTML markups, and contains password in input. Here is a table of the results. Here are the 15 rules. In red, you have the percentage of phishing bogus websites, which had, which was corresponding to that rule. In blue, you have the false positives. And you see that there are some rules where there are no false positives at all. Rule 5, for instance, is not terribly effective because there are like 20% false positives there. I think I missed. One slide is missing. Yeah, there's one slide which I remember making that. So let me make this point unassisted by a slide. Neither approach is very good with innovative phishing sites, for instance, created by somebody who is aware of these 15 rules and will try and avoid putting in anything that is covered there. So the innovative attacks in general throughout the field, the academic field and the industry will always be a problem. But what struck me, remember I promised to admit a bias, and where the three of us started the conversation over dinner, I think, about trying to apply the ontological semantic technology, which is where Julia and I come in, to phishing, was at an earlier stage. That is, how to protect the user from clicking. You clicked, you may already be open to malware or something like that. Can we recognize the email as phishing and not go where it wants us to go, not to click? And there's practically no research about it. I read, I looked, and then I did the ultimate thing you do in information security if you want to know whether anybody has done anything. I called SPAF. And he thought hard about it, probably over 10 seconds. And yeah, right. Oh, he was tired. He had just flown back from somewhere, a secret location. He mentioned the suspicious words, and he mentioned things like in the mail header, the email is not what it purported to do. 4 or 5 years ago, it helped me 100% of the time. I don't get phishing mails that can be caught as easily as possible. And so this is what made us think whether our technology, which is capable, it's work in progress, we're getting better and better, we are not yet there, but it can understand the text, be it phishing or anything else, close to the way humans do. Whether we can find semantic and probably other clues in the text, which will alert us to the fact that it's very likely to be a phishing email. Not the analysis of the website, but rather of the email itself. And here comes a caveat that is a word of caution. If we people are not very good about it, if I get an email from a professional association I belong to, and they ask me to update my personal information there, or say that it has been hacked, or they lost it, or whatever, how can I tell whether it's for real or not? To the extent that I can, to the extent that something raises my suspicions, what we are going to suggest will eventually, ideally, get that as well. To the extent that we hesitate, that's an interesting question. Can we do better than people? Can we understand more? This is an open question, and Julia, I don't think, will be answering it, but she will talk about the approach. Thanks.
You're supposed to tell me. No?
Tell me.
No. Where am I? Yes, right here. So where we come in, as Victor said, is ontological semantic technology that tackles to understand text. So if you read these texts right here, right, these are emails, real emails, in my inbox. I think this one wasn't spam, I'm not quite sure. But nevertheless, I highly doubt that it got to spam because it actually understood what it was. You as a user who reads whatever it is that's in your email understands what it's about and can make certain conclusion, right? No, it's not for me, somebody is doing something that they're not supposed to. The same thing here. Do you know what mystery shopping assignments are? Okay, good, then I don't have to explain. So if you know what these mystery shoppings are and you read right here and they're asking you for $200 for assignment, you know it's not real. There is no mystery shopper who is going to get $200 from the start. So we are using some kind of background knowledge that we have about the world to process text and to figure out whether or not it is relevant to us, whether we should follow instructions that are in the text, or we can just ignore it and say, okay, this is trash, this is spam, call somebody and say, hey, you know, somebody is pretending to be you, you might want to take care of that. This is a real one. This is a real shopping assignment. As you can tell, can you read it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Those of you that are in the back are now paying the price for sitting in the back instead of sitting in the front row. So this is the real assignment, and the striking thing that I, as a person, would notice is the price right here. So assuming that you don't know what a mystery shopping is, but if your computer can collect enough information with understanding of the text and of its meaning, not just keyword based, because that is not gonna do, then the hope is, or our goal is, that it will be able to flag this thing right here as illegitimate. Right? So it's going to understand the text, figure out what the pertinent features are, what we're interested in, and flag this as illegitimate, the other one. And this is what ontological semantics is all about. We are trying to understand text and make it translate it into a form that computer can understand so that it can reason with it. Computers do not understand what is right here. Ontological semantic technology, the most advanced implementation probably was developed by Riverglass Incorporated, and this is a picture from them. So it contains, the central part of it is the ontology. And the ontology is that world knowledge that we all possess. So everything that we know about the world in general, not particular facts, but in general, is going to be represented right here, again, in a form that computer is going to understand. Not in words, not in text description, but in symbols that computers can read. The ontology is language independent. The reason why it's language independent is just like you and I, those of us that speak several languages, can talk about the same information in multiple languages, and assuming that the speaker and hearer both speak those languages, they understand each other. So that's why this ontology has to be language independent. The lexicon, on the other hand, is very much language dependent. So if it is English, it is going to have English words. Each word is going to be described sense by sense, each meaning by meaning, what it can be used as. It is going to have the syntactic rules that it should follow if it's in a sentence, its meaning, and some other things, morphology, specialized rules. We don't care about that right now. So as you have the text, you have text as input. This is your background. This right here is more or less static, and this is dynamic. So you have this background, you enter, you read the text. A semantic text analyzer, as it was called in Riverglass, is a black box that is going to interpret the meaning of this text per information that is right here in this box. And then it has the output as text meaning representations, as vague, as ambiguous as the natural language text contains, and that is going to be entered into the infrastore. So in the end of the day, your infrastore is going to contain machine interpretable information of all the text that it has processed so far, up to that point. So if you have a sentence, Bill kicked the bucket, and then, it tells you that you inherited something, what is going to happen is a bill, whatever bill means, is going to be interpreted with all the senses that are in English lexicon. You're going to interpret kick, or kick the bucket, so basically figure out what can work there, and here are some of the senses. So kick can be a hit, or kick can be as a giving something up, or kick the bucket is obviously die, and then you're looking at the sense of the bucket, and it's either a physical container or some kind of a collection of data. And then once it has all of it, it tries to combine it with some sort of relationships that it has in the ontology and the lexicon. So it is generating all these possible links, and there are very many of them, and once it generates them, it is going to try and reduce it according to the information that, again, it has somewhere, according to certain restrictions. So if this is the sense of this right here, you will look at the syntax. This is how it should appear in the sentence, and you will look at its interpretation, and I'll try to decipher it for you. What it says right here, that in front of hit, there has to be some noun phrase which has to serve as an agent of this event. So it is the doer of the event. After the event, and the event in this case is hit, you have to have something that is a direct object syntactically, which serves as a theme or explains to you what it does. These relationships, are carefully checked against the ontology, and it will tell you whether or not it is possible. So it will tell you whether a person is capable of physically kicking something. It will tell you whether a person that kicks something, physically kicks something, can do that to a collection of data. And the answer is no. And it will do that with every combination that it finds. In the end, you can see the red lines maybe. Yes, these are the lines that it will find acceptable. In the end, out of all of this mess, you only have three possible interpretations. Bill being the person physically kicking a container, or Bill being the person dying. Notice that because bucket is used in this sense right here, we don't have to link it to anything right here. This is how it's going to look. These two interpretations, again, in a machine-represented form. Machine knows how to interpret that because we are in the business of using the technology. And they also have some weights. So each interpretation is going to be weighted according what it can be per whatever information that is in the ontology and elsewhere. This, once you have it, is being entered. So now we have this representation and it's being entered into the InfoStore. It is seemingly very simple. So you take each sentence that's in the email, in the text, you try to see if there are any interpretations of it. If you find interpretations, you throw them into the InfoStore as the new knowledge that you received. Great. This approach was tried on the spam detection. That should be 2011. And it's exactly that architecture that I described to you that was used. So it was just checking it against the ontology and then throwing the results in the InfoStore. It was sort of read, let's try and see how much we can come up with. And you can see the numbers. So you can see that the accuracy of spam detection and the F-score was quite good. And we failed sort of short, or they did, with the accuracy of meaningful text, or F-score of meaningful text. What it boils down to is that instead of throwing all of this into the InfoStore right away, perhaps there should be some kind of filter that will check whether the representations, the interpretations that we received are actually good enough. So not only that the data should be checked against the ontology, which is just the thing that we know about the world, but also against the actual instances, the information that we know, the real thing, the text that we processed. We think that if you do that, you'll have a higher accuracy in predicting what is in the previous experiments, case of previous experiments, spam or not, and also with phishing. So where we are coming in with phishing is you as a reader looking and reading the text, and it asks you for information like your telephone number, date of birth, whatever, not even account numbers or resetting the password so that it can get to it. But you just received an email saying, please supply this for whatever reason. You should be able to look at your InfoStore and see if there are some contradictions about this email. So maybe you previously received an email from your bank saying that, oh, by the way, we are never going to send you an email requesting this, and this. And now you received an email and it says, we did something bad, please reset it, or please send it to us again. The system should at least flag it. We are not saying that it should tell you don't do it, but at least it should flag it so that you can do something about it. Double check it. Call your bank saying, is this for real or not? Yeah, and the question is, of course, how do you know it? So it's not as simple as just reading in the info store. You have to collect salient features. How to collect the salient features is still research in progress, but nevertheless, if you say something, have some rules ahead of time. Don't give up your username. If they're asking for your username, this is bad. If they're asking for amount of money that is higher than in the normal emails that were described before, that is bad. If straight out contradictions, that is also bad. The information that we are collecting, yes, what is it that we compare it with? Everything that's in the info store, everything that is related to, remotely related to whatever criminal activities that are there. So an article like this that is going to describe what happened somewhere, we are going to interpret that with the text menu representations, right, that are stored in the info store as something bad that happened. It tells us right here, recently warned something. You know that if you have a hit against this text, that something is similar to this text, that is your flag.
Other clues as well. If you see a word like Bundeskriminalamt, you know it's credible because no fisher is capable of coming up with a word.
Remember, they're very creative. They'll come up with something.
In German?
There is something else that we have to be careful about, and this comes to Victor's point that we can only be as good as humans. So in the end, the human is going to make the final decision, but at least we should flag something. This is a real email. I have no idea whether this is credible or not. What I don't like about it is conference on wireless communication, networking, and mobile computing. I have nothing to do with that. I deal with natural language, and they're saying that somewhere here that I am a leading authority of the field. And they're asking for brief CV and photo. Remember, Spaff was talking about photos on Facebook, putting somewhere else. They're not asking for my name. They're not asking for my telephone number. They're asking for my CV. Well, my CV contains all of this. Right? So if you're only doing the keywords that will tell you, oh, if they're asking for name, telephone number, social security number, whatever, citizenship, some CVs contain citizenship also, this is a bad email, don't do anything with this. You have to have some inferences and some understanding on what this actually is and what it can do to determine whether it's legitimate or not. 705 actually. But thank you. This, on the other hand, is very bad, not legitimate, and you can see it right away, but notice that it follows into the same rule. It contains information that is not relevant to me. Apparently, Mr. So-and-so contacted me a long time ago. No, he didn't.
It was at the wireless conference.
Right.
Or long ago, in your previous slide, you don't remember what they do.
Right, or maybe he contacted my cat and he just forgot to relay the message. I understand all of this. So there is a lot of stuff right here, even if you don't look at these ridiculous numbers. There is a lot of information right here that should trigger your alarm, right? Otherwise, they can just put a link here and say, okay, please follow this link to do whatever we ask you. So we think that there is a lot to be gained from understanding what the text actually says. Once you have all of this, once you're just comparing text into certain rule-based inference, if you will, some of us believe that a human is not going to be capable of determining whether this is real or not. And that's where magic is going to be involved in form of machine learning, except that machine learning is not going to be done with words. It's going to be done with, about 2,000 to 10,000 concepts that in our ontology. So the set that you are operating on, the set that you are training on, the set that you are testing on, the set that you are working is much smaller. You're no longer dealing with 50,000 words that are possible. You can do much more. You can have inferences that are much better. You can have classification that is much better. That's just simple math. And I'm throwing it back to Victor and Jean for whatever discussions you want to have out of this, because we have a little under 5 minutes.
I would like to add straight away.
You need to go up where the mic is.
Yeah. I would like to add right away that Julia was obviously nervous about too many slides, but in the ontological semantic technology, there is another component that she didn't mention, only alluded to, and I got the illusion where she asked on a previous slide, where do we know it from? We started...
It's from InfraStore.
You said from InfraStore, but there is another component that we are developing, and this is
Keep talking.
common sense knowledge. That is, things that may not have been in the text that we processed, because it's so trivial that we know all of that. And yeah, they're actually there, but we didn't comment on it. Common sense rules, that is, things that we know about the world that are not necessarily in the ontology. Something like tea kettle will be in the ontology, and some properties of that will be discussed. But nowhere in the ontology can we say that after the water just boiled, don't touch the surface because you will be burned. We know all of that. We live in the world imbued in thousands of such common sense rules, and we think we have a handle on how to acquire them and add them to the knowledge. And obviously humans use that resource in processing texts, and so our system must have it also.
And I'll just add as a follow-on to what Victor said about common sense rules, the fact that so much of this spam and phishing and so on continues is because there are people out there for whom common sense is uncommon. There are people who respond to these and who do give up their information, who do respond and allow access to their systems. And there are perhaps not many, even if it's 0.1%, if whoever is conducting the phishing exercises is sending out 10 million of these, the rate of return is still sufficiently valuable for them to continue. The smaller the number of people who are phished, generally the individuals involved focus their phishing attempts and use more personalized information. This is a common tactic used in espionage, industrial and political, to get someone to open up access to a system in some way, give up passwords or other kind of information. And is also increasingly being used by criminal elements to find out information that can be used to break bank accounts, or possibly to find out intellectual property from organizations, and speculatively it could be used to find out information about the movements of those whales, those important individuals, for purposes of kidnapping, extortion, or other kinds of activities. So the phishing problem is more than simply an annoyance of worrying about whether or not the email you got actually is from some deposed prince in Nigeria, or somebody who has successfully moved $10 million in gold bullion out of Afghanistan to a bank just waiting for you to pick it up. It is perhaps much more finely honed and of potential significant danger to individuals, some of the phishing that goes on. And so we have a range of things that we're really concerned with. We're hitting the end of our time. And whoops, I went too fast. But we're at the point now where we're doing some preliminary work in this area. And it's really too early to say how well this will work, but we intend to continue to do some work on this, and certainly if any of you are interested in being involved, we'd like to talk to you further. So we've hit the end of our time for the seminar, but we'll stay around to answer questions if there are any. So thank you very much.